I know that some in our audience know the finer points of hockey.
The Chris Johnston Show.
We are your friends.
The biggest stories, bringing you inside the game.
What did you hear?
The Chris Johnston Show. Powered by Sports Interaction. Wanna bet?
What is going on?
Here's Chris with your host, Julian McKenzie.
Part of the game.
CJ, why are you wearing your juggernaut shirt? We need to get this out the way to start off this show. Why are you wearing your juggernaut shirt?
I mean, I just reached in the closet today and it was the first thing I grabbed. So no reason. I mean, look, there's juggernauts around us as well. I mean,
who are these juggernauts around us? Now you have to tell us. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's a 61 win NHL team at the moment.
Someone's going to take that and think you're doing that on purpose. Be careful.
Well, I'm having fun with the whole shtick.
Look, I don't normally care about that stuff. I'm just looking out for you. Some Bruins fan out there is just panicking. No,
I didn't say anything about any team being a juggernaut.
This is a great tease.
I just said that we walk among juggernauts.
I mean, we walk. Some would say we walk among giants or other types of special people, but you chose to use the J word. But you know what?
I've watched Brooks Koepka through 2 days of the Masters. He looks like a juggernaut.
How's he doing?
Oh, he's right at the top of the leaderboard, my friend.
Man,
as we're recording, there's still half a day Friday to go, so maybe someone will go low in the afternoon. But as we're recording now, Brooks is at the top of the leaderboard. I wonder. I mean, it's too bad Aaron Ekblad is tied up with the Florida Panthers playoff race, or he could maybe get down to Augusta and reverse the cheers or the jeers.
Man, have we talked about the menu that's gone around? I mean, I think every year, like, they don't have a lot of expensive stuff, but like you could buy everything on the menu there for like $66, and they look like they have like genuinely like great stuff. Yes.
Well, in a previous life, I covered 3 Masters, so I've been down there a fair bit. And the cool part about the Masters, well, there's a lot if you're a golf fan. I think even if you're just a casual sports fan, you can get into the vibe there. But is that it's like stepping back in time when you walk on the grounds. You're not allowed to bring your cell phone on the course.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, like you'll notice, and they're serious about it. Like you'll notice if you're watching any of the action over the weekend and you look closely at the gallery, like most tournaments, when Tiger Woods is hitting, everyone's doing this with their phones, right?
Yeah, of course.
None of that at the Masters. So there's no distractions that way. Media and family members, VIPs, everything not allowed inside the ropes. So if you go to another tournament, there's always a lot of chaos inside the ropes, not the Masters. And then you go to the concession stands and it's literally like going back to 1985 with $1.50 sandwich. And I think the beers are $5 or $6 on that menu I saw going around. I mean, it's pretty good value. It's hard to get a ticket. And I'm sure a lot of people pay a lot of money on the resale market to get in the gates. But once you're in the gates, it's a pretty reasonable experience. And, you know, the other thing they do from a TV perspective, which is interesting, is they don't really have commercials. And so there's ways that they could commercialize and extract more money from this tournament. I'm sure they're doing quite well, even without taking everything to the max, but they've chosen to kind of keep certain things a certain way. And yeah, I liked the egg salad sandwich when I was down there.
Okay.
We don't want to go down this food road every episode. You and I are it is not in this case. That's not even a forced bringing it up. It was one of the things on the menu, but no poutine hot dogs at Augusta. It's all traditional there.
Yeah. One thing I regret not doing now is taking the menu and giving you like $10 to like pick out which items you'd buy with like $10. That's one thing I regret not putting in our lineup. But we do have
two sandwiches and a beer. Get me that for $10.
But later on in our show, we do have something that will play to that Green Jacket Masters fancy. We'll hold that until the end.
Have you been on social media in the last day or so?
A little bit here and there. You know what I'm saying?
Did you see that producer Nick was part of this behind the scene Rogers Center tour?
I loved it.
Did you see that producer Nick ate the poutine hot dog?
Oh, of course. And he looked so happy doing it.
I've never seen him so happy. Now, granted, usually we're doing this show in the morning. You can tell he's just gotten out of bed. He's fired up Zoom and he's seeing us first thing. So I get that he's not always happy in the morning.
He doesn't even turn the camera on. Like
he looked pretty damn happy though.
he
with
looked
that poutine
really
hot dog.
happy. He did. He looked like he's all like he. I saw like there's the beginning of the TikTok or whatever, like all the different Sportsnet social people, and he's got this big smile on his face. He's just like hulling around everybody. Like you're right. I've never seen that man so happy in my life to eat a glizzy.
Our jobs never suck.
No,
but like his job yesterday appeared to be going to a baseball stadium and eating food on camera. That seems to be what he got paid to do yesterday. So. I mean, kudos to producer Nick. I think that's why we couldn't do a Thursday show. The Thursday TV show episode was because producer Nick had to go eat at the Sky Dome. So I'm glad that happened. But I'm also glad that he's the first example that I know of that the poutine hot dog is good. So I'm feeling like he walked on the moon first here. And
no, don't say that.
It was a
not
small
walk
step.
on no damn moon. This is
was
not
a small step for this podcast, but a giant leap for mankind.
Shout out Justin Cuthbert, who also apparently got to try the hot dog, and he showed some sensibility. But also, he wrote when I tweeted at him about it, he was like, "It's not my scene, Mackenzie," which I kind of feel like he tweeted that thinking that like he would just think I would like the hot dog because there's poutine in it, but that's not how that works.
I kind of thought he's like, I'm a Sportsnet employee. It's not my job to be hating on the food at the company building.
That's true.
But I could tell he probably didn't like it. Anyway, I'll be getting to a Jays game. That they come home next week, so I'll be getting there soon, and I'll give you my own update once I get a chance to hold that fabulous hot dog.
Yeah, the juggernaut of all hot dogs.
I don't know if I want to call. I don't want to jinx the dog before I get a chance.
Oh, now you don't want to use the J word. Oh, now you're all like, whoa.
Hey, I haven't attached it to one hockey team all year long. I have not used it in a sentence. I've not written it. I've not tweeted it. Even today, I've just shown up. It's open for interpretation.
You know what the hell you doing with it. I don't care what you're trying to do. You know what the damn hell you're doing with it.
Honestly, I'm just trying to occupy some real estate between your ears. I wanted you guessing right from the time you started this episode.
See, what do you want me to guess? It's right in front of my face. I feel bad for all of our audio listeners who have not caught on by now that Chris Johnston is literally wearing a shirt that just says juggernaut on it. I mean, you've probably seen it. It's not the first time he's worn it, but like he's legit wearing it. Like this is his troll.
Wow, no, I'm just trying to keep it light around here, my friend.
Hey,
it's spring.
We do that every episode. Yes, it is spring. I mean, depending on which part of the country you're in. I don't know how much of the I know in Montreal they've had to deal with like a bunch of freezing rain and like a whole bunch of power has gone out and stuff like that. I don't know how much you've had to deal with that, but
well, that's kind of part of spring in Canada too, right?
That too, yeah.
The problem in Canada is you get to spring, you're like, yes, we made it through winter, but then you still like get another month of crappy weather. Like you forget that every time. It's different crap, right? It's usually not snow in most parts of the country, but it's still just like gray and rainy. And anyway,
we didn't talk hockey at all.
I'm going to cover a playoff series in Tampa in the next 2 weeks, so I'm going to get away from it at some point.
I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like the last 2 days, I have been in a meeting for writers who are not covering playoff teams, and I have also been in a meeting with writers who are covering playoff teams. At this moment in time, I have no idea where I will be on Monday, April 17th. I don't know. How do you deal with that, actually? Before we get into other like hockey topics, I'm sure there's been a year where like you have been in a situation where you're like, I have no idea if I'm traveling. I don't know how to plan for that. How do you how do you deal with that? How do you deal with that? Like, what do you do?
Dude, a year, try the last 15 years. Like, I mean, even if you were covering, this is the way I'll put it. Even if you're covering the Boston Bruins right now, who you've known for months are going to be in the playoffs, after the first 4 games, you don't know what's going to happen. They could win in 4 and you got some time off. They could go for 4 rounds. Like you just never know. I mean, basically don't make plans in April, May, and most of June if you're in this business. I mean, it kind of like it's a good problem to have. This has got to be couched the right way, but it is true. Like you can't, like, who knows? Even this morning, I went for 20K run. I'm trying to gear up. There might be an opportunity to run a half marathon here in the near future, but like it's entirely dependent on if I'm in the right city at the right time and have the ability to do it. So, yeah, you name it. I mean, at least Easter is this weekend before the playoffs start, so I can see my family then as planned. But after that, it's sort of like, well, let's just see what happens with the results of some hockey games.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Speaking of those hockey games and that Tampa series that you know for sure you're going to be covering, well, the Leafs have home ice advantage in that, so we know that for sure. But the Lightning, a couple weeks ago, we kind of wondered what was wrong with them, and now it seems as if they have a bunch of injuries just piling up. And I mean, they kind of look like a wounded animal, but also at the same time, it's the Tampa Bay Lightning who know how to play in the postseason. Like what's your read on them right now? And then we'll get to the Leafs and the fact that they seem to be healing as well.
Well, little birdie told me, just for those keen listeners that might care, that the Leafs Lightning series will start on the 18th. So Tuesday in Toronto, it would be, I mean, don't ironclad it. Don't change your schedule around, but that's what I've heard anyway, for those that are interested. Anyway, as for the Lightning, I mean, look, it's hard to know what to make of everything. I mean, you have to separate it out. So on Thursday night, they played at Long Island. They kept Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel out of their lineup with what they called lower body injuries. Now, is that the time of year where you're just resting some bumps and bruises? I mean, we've seen the Leafs sit Mark Giordano, Mitch Marner, Morgan Riley in some recent games, kind of in a load management style. So maybe it's that. What was different is seeing Tanner Jeannot leave the ice needing assistance, not being able to put any weight on his right leg after falling really awkwardly and kind of having his leg pinned under him in that game. After the fact, John Cooper said that he's, very highly concerned about the status of his winger. In addition to that, Pat Maroon actually took a skate up kind of near the rib cage area. He left the game. Eric Cernak sat out. So yes, I mean, the Lightning definitely are contending with some injuries and bumps and bruises. But, beyond the Jeannot situation, which does look like that could be a significant injury suffered in that game, it's hard to know what the rest is. This just, healing up before the playoffs and these guys are going to play or not. And so, this being this close to the playoffs, we're probably not going to find out maybe till game one. I mean, who knows, depending on how these things are. But certainly it's going the wrong way for Tampa. I would say for the Leafs, after clinching home ice advantage in that first round series, the only thing that matters in the 4 remaining regular season games is just getting through them as healthy as possible. Because now they've clinched home ice against the Lightning. There really is very little to play for. I mean, we could point to some personal milestones. Mitch Marner's a chance at 100 points. Nylander and Matthews got a shot at 40 goals, but I really don't think those things matter too much. Especially when you see what's going on in Tampa. Now, the Leafs don't have the cap room to sit half their team or anything like that. I mean, there's ways they can get creative. I'm sure at some point they're going to sign Matthew Nyes here in the coming days, and I'm sure he'll get a couple games, which allows them to sit someone down among the forwards. But this is all about roster management at this point in time, and I think it's a huge sign for Toronto that not only did Ryan O'Reilly play his first game in 33 days on Thursday night, I thought he looked really good. For someone coming off a surgically repaired finger, his left index finger, he was able to take faceoffs. Certainly was kind of in a third line versus third line matchup and got the better of those minutes. He and his line mates, which were Alex Kerfoot and Nola Chari. And so I think that's a good sign for Toronto. Their big deadline edition, it appears to be, in the form you'd hope as the playoffs are coming around the corner here. And unfortunately for Tampa, their big deadline edition is much in question.
All right, Siege, we're going to go to Sports Interaction, and then we're going to get to the rest of our show, talk a little bit more about some of the playoff races, talk about Lean Hutson as well, and then we will end with stick taps.
You can bet that with David Bastel. Brought to you by Sports Interaction. Get in the action and make a play. 19 plus. Please play responsibly.
Welcome to You Can Bet That. Remember to hit up sportsinteraction.com/SDPN for all of your gaming needs. If you go on the Sports Interaction website right now, here are the latest odds for the Stanley Cup winner. Boston still the betting favorite at plus 354. Colorado in second place at plus 640. Carolina, Toronto, and Edmonton are third through fifth. And again, you can check them out at sportsinteraction.com. Make sure you go through the SDPN, of course. Boston, Colorado, Carolina, Toronto, and Edmonton, 2 Canadian teams in that top 5 for the best odds at who could win the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I think the Oilers are still being slept on, man. Like I just, you look back at the last half of the season, they've been by far the best team in the Western Conference in terms of the results. And they've been right up there with Boston in terms of winning percentage and all those types of things. Them in Vegas, actually. So maybe Vegas also getting overlooked a bit. And I think historically, if you look at teams that go on to win the cup, often the ones that finished the season strongest, I don't just mean the last month, but I mean the last several months, tend to be the ones that go on and have the success in the playoffs. So, I got to say, Edmonton has my eye a little bit out west, and maybe not to the odds makers don't, I guess, agree with me at the moment.
It's funny. New Jersey has better odds than the Vegas Golden Knights right now for the Stanley Cup.
Well, I think New Jersey's earned it. And look, the Devils still have a chance to win the division with Carolina. And so, that not that there's no easy road. We've established this the way the playoff system works, but, playing a wild card team is probably a little better than having to play the Rangers in the first round, which is where the Devils will have to do if they don't win the division in the Metro. So, yeah, I mean, I think all those teams certainly have a chance to win. Really the top 7 or 8 teams I always consider is probably the group that you're picking a winner from. And then we watch chaos ensue once the playoffs begin.
Chaos ensuing. It hits different when there's a chance you could cover a team amidst that chaos, but they might also not be involved in it. So maybe I get to enjoy the chaos from my couch, but I digress. Big Money Siege. SportsInteraction.com/SDPN for all your gaming needs. For all the best odds before game, in-game, best props, SportsInteraction.com/SDPN. This episode of the Chris Johnston Show is brought to you by NordVPN. Do you ever get frustrated that you can't watch certain live sports because they're not televised or available in your country? With NordVPN, you can switch your virtual location to a country that is showing the sports event you want, so that way you don't miss out and you can catch all the action live. What about a new TV show or a movie you're really excited to watch, but it's not available in your country yet? Ugh, that sucks. But with NordVPN, you can switch your virtual location with one click, and you can access all these different streaming services from over 60 countries at no extra cost. It literally opens up a Pandora's box of entertaining content, and it's the price of a cup of coffee every month. It's literally a small price to pay for premium cybersecurity and access to a vast amount of entertaining content from all over the world. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/CJ Show, and you can get yourself a huge discount off of your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. It's pretty good and completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Get your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/CJ Show. CJ, we got to continue with our look at these playoff races. We can start off in the Eastern Conference. I know we kind of went in already on Toronto and Tampa, where they're at right now. Florida and the Islanders and Pittsburgh. That looks really interesting in the wild card. Pittsburgh getting a big win yesterday. Florida still just tied with the Islanders for that wild card spot. They're also getting the job done too. They've won 5 in a row, the Florida Panthers. This was a team that was on the outside looking in not too long ago, and now they find themselves in a pretty prime position to make the playoffs. What do you make of what's going on in the East right now?
Yeah, ever since Big Walt called the Panthers out to Keith Tkachuk there, it looks like they haven't been able to lose. And what's interesting with Florida is they're using their third string goaltender in Alex Lyon right now. And he's authored quite a story, not just getting wins, but making a lot of saves in these games. I know they scored a lot of goals on Thursday to make it maybe more comfortable for them. But, this is what happens when you get to the finish line. Sometimes someone sees that, sees what's ahead and finds a way to grind out the victories. And I think that's where the Panthers are at. And, Thursday night, there's 3 teams there for 2 spots, and all 3 of them won the game that they were playing, which means that Pittsburgh is still just on the outside looking in, trying to extend its playoff streak into yet another year. So, I think it's a compelling race. I have no idea which way it's going to go. I do remember saying a few episodes ago, I was thinking Florida was going to find their way in, and that was when they were on the outside. So I'll stick with them, the hot hand. But this is probably going down to next week.
Siege, let's go to the Western Conference. We know Winnipeg and Calgary doing battle to the death for that final wildcard spot. Nashville is still in there too. They have a game in hand on Calgary, as does Winnipeg. Seattle, congratulations to the Kraken. They clinched their first ever playoff spot. So one of those 2 wildcard spots already off the board. And even in the Pacific Division as well, that race is looking interesting as well, with Vegas 3 points up on Edmonton. And in the Central, very close. Minnesota lost that game to Pittsburgh, so now they're 2 points behind Colorado and Dallas. There's a lot to process in the Western Conference right now, Siege.
Yeah, and if we went back to the start of the year and we said the Kraken were going to make the playoffs, I mean, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't have believed it, but it would have been a stretch, right? I mean, there wasn't a whole lot to take from their first year of existence to suggest that a 20, 30 point jump was going to be there for them. So complete hats off to that organization for moving forward. I know they made a couple big signings and trades in the offseason, but they still just, I think accomplished this by getting incrementally better and having a deep team. And it does leave an interesting race now. I mean, we haven't really talked about the Predators at all, Julian, and yet they still just hang around. UC Saros having the kind of year that should get him at least, I think, Vezina Trophy talk. I wouldn't put him as the favorite, given that you have Linus Ullmark and Ilya Sorokin, even Connor Hellebuck. I mean, there's a stiff competition there, but Saros has been tremendous for the Preds. He's playing an old school kind of workload, up above 60 games in a season. And, who knows at this point? I mean, as I say, I'm not making predictions when you get to this stage, but it's pretty interesting to see it go right down to these last final days. It's been better playoff race wise than what we saw last season when a lot more was decided with still, 6-7 days left in the year.
Absolutely. I just want to say UC Saros was my preseason pick to win the Vezina. I know that won't happen, but it is cool to see him do well. Moneypuck.com. If you go on their website and you look up their goalie statistics and you see goals saved above expected, UC Saros is the leader at 43.4. That's better than Linus Ullmark. That's better than Ilya Sorokin, better than Andrei Vasilevsky, Igor Shesterkin, Connor Hellebuck, Jeremy Swayman, all the goalies you could think of. UC Saros right now, the best goal saved above expected rate.
Well, I'll say, you're definitive, and I get it that he's not going to win the Vezina. To me, if they get in, the only reason you're going to look at them getting in, especially after a deadline where they sold Ekholm and Niederreiter and Jeannot and Granlund, I mean, you're going to be looking at Saros. And so, the GMs vote on that award. It's impossible for me to say how 32 GMs will vote, but I still think he's got a shot at it, especially, I mean, they have to make the playoffs, I think, from a narrative standpoint. But he's played a lot more games than Ullmark, right? And I think that could give him a respect factor among the GMs, especially if he finishes strong here in the last week of the season and the Predators somehow find their way to break hearts in 2 Canadian cities.
Jeez. Yeah. I'm just laughing just because, Calgary could go through that, and Winnipeg, just thinking of Murat Atesh and the Jets that he's been covering all year. Just what a fall for the Jets. Just a team that looked as if they were the best in Canada, and now they are clinging by a thread. Maybe not as thin as what the Flames are clinging onto right now, but they could easily fall out.
They could. I mean, they control their own destiny, which I think you always feel good about if you're a team, but at the same time, they've lost a lot of winnable games over the last month or two. And so they put themselves in this position where it goes down to these last couple games and there really isn't much margin for error. So you'd rather be in control as Winnipeg is, but man, it's going to be real playoff games starting Saturday when the NHL schedule starts again.
Oh yeah, and you can even argue some of those teams have already been in playoff mode. I want to move on, unless there was something else you want to add with whatever's going on in the Western Conference race. There is a question I have about a prospect who's had himself a remarkable season at the collegiate level. Unless there was something else you wanted to add.
No, let's move along.
Cool. So Lane Hutson from Boston University, Montreal Canadiens prospect, had arguably one of the greatest, if not the greatest, season by a freshman defenseman, named among the 10 finalists for the Hobey Baker, not among the final 3, but among the final 10 for that award. His time at the Frozen Four has come to an end with Boston University, I believe, losing to Matthew Nyes' team, the University of Minnesota, the Gophers. They're going to go to the final in Tampa on the weekend. Lane Hutson's time's done. What does that mean for his future at Boston University?
It's an interesting question. I think because he's a freshman and because the first thing you hear about Lane Hutson always is not very big. I mean, he's got sort of Johnny Gaudreau vibes from a physique standpoint, and he plays defense that you'd think it was automatic that he'd have at least a couple of years in the NCAA. And I think ultimately that's what's probably going to happen here. But I think that there's at least a discussion and a consideration from his end of things with his, advisor and, with the Montreal Canadiens about what's best for his development, because this season was so good. You go back 6-7 weeks ago, 2 months ago, whatever, I would have said, put money on it. He's going to play at least a sophomore year. at BU. I think that because he's just finished so strong, that the Terriers got to the Frozen Four, I think somewhat, I don't know if surprisingly, but wasn't necessarily expected when their season began. And Lane Hutson played so many important minutes. There's at least a conversation we had there. Ultimately, I'm not sure if it makes sense for him to jump out of college at this point, especially where the Canadians are at in their development cycle. But my goodness, it looks like the Habs have found themselves a pretty strong prospect here. One they got in the second round, probably because of how small he is. Would probably be the best way to guess why he fell out of the first round, where some of the boards had him going initially. But if my gut, and from what I've heard, I think he'll probably be back with BU, but it's not a foregone conclusion as we record this now, because the loss in that game was only 14, 16 hours ago, and so I think there's still some discussion to happen there with the Canadiens brass.
Yeah, I wonder if the Canadians would elect to do that again, where they sign a player and almost immediately kind of put him in their lineup. That's kind of what they did with Sean Farrell. Like, he immediately kind of went out of Harvard, and then boom, you're already playing for your NHL team, which I'm not sure. I mean, I was reading Arpon Basu's article on that. It seemed as if, just with the way that went down, I don't know if that was a uniform decision that Martin St. Louis was totally in favor of with Kent Hughes, with him being in the lineup, but Sean Farrell's there. So I'm curious how that will also go.
Well, and let's look at a comparison. Cale Makar, and I'm certainly not saying Lane Hutson will be Cale Makar. That's a pretty high bar,
absolutely,
given all that he's accomplished. But Cale Makar did play 2 NCAA seasons. I think that has kind of been what you see with young defensemen. Typically, Adam Fox played a couple years in college. Like, I don't think that there's any harm in one more season at the collegiate ranks. But everyone's unique too. There's not one pattern that we're all a little different, and the way we look at situations is different, the way we develop is different. But I think that there's enough of a track record here where we've seen impactful defensemen spend multiple years at the NCAA level. That's probably what's best for Lane Hutson. But the fact it's even a conversation really is just a testament to what a strong season he had for the Terriers. Put up monster points. He played huge minutes and was a big part of that team's success, getting all the way to the semifinal.
Okay, one last thing before we get to stick taps. Who wears the green jacket in the NHL this year? Which is not necessarily a good thing compared to wearing a green jacket at the Masters. It does not have that same allure at all.
Well, as we're recording this, it's actually Columbus Blue Jackets defenseman Andrew Peeke. But if you look down at the bottom, handful, I mean, look, this is a team award. I mean, it's something that's kind of played around with. I know some other pods make light of it. And plus minus as a stat, I think is kind of certainly not as prominent as it once was. But what caught my eye is that Johnny Gaudreau is among the bottom handful of players in that stat at minus 32. And the reason that caught my eye is because I remember last year in Calgary, he led the entire league at plus 64. And so, as we're getting into Masters weekend and getting to the final week of the NHL regular season, trying to figure out which player will be wearing the green jacket among the NHL. I mean, what a crazy turn of events. And I think it does underline the stat. I mean, look, there's no secret why the guys that are in the very bottom of plus minus are there. We've had some really bad teams this year. And most of the players that are at the bottom are the guys who play big minutes, tough minutes, heavy matchup minutes on the bad teams. And so I'm certainly not putting it all on Johnny Gaudreau's shoulders. But, what a turnaround to be 96 goals different from between last year to this year in terms of his goal differential on the ice.
Absolutely. Also some other names on that list too. Seth Jones, who's only 1 point off of Andrew Peeke out in Chicago. Drake Batherson is there. Jordan Kyrou is also in the top 5. Seeing Alex DeBrincat, Boone Jenner, Thomas Hertl rounds out the top 10 as well. Yeah, a lot of guys on this list who are not going to be seeing this year's postseason, especially, but also just pretty tough for those guys.
But they're kind of aware of it. I'm not sure they're checking this every day, but no one wants to wear the green jacket in the NHL. So you get down these last few games, they'll be jumping off the ice trying to not get tagged with any more minuses here to secure that crown.
Absolutely. Okay, we've now reached the stick taps portion of our program today. Siege, do you want to start? Should I start? How do you want to go about this?
Sure, I'll go first. And, I think it's one that we both share, that, the 5th anniversary of the Humboldt Broncos tragedy is just past. And, I think that the entire country put their sticks out for the Broncos after that happened. And of course, we here at the Chris Johnston Show are going to be stick tapping for them. I've been lucky to spend time with the surviving members of that team, know a number of them quite well, including my buddy Tyler Smith, who I saw put on his IG yesterday, that this was home for him. And it was a picture of the Broncos, and, an awful tragedy, of course, that's sort of, I think, unfortunately is going to be part of our country's history or fabric for a long, long time. But they were such a close team too. And so, I wish the best to those guys. I think that, obviously they've endured a lot of physical trauma and mental trauma. The surviving members of that team, the families, unfortunately, of the players and staff that were lost in that tragedy. But I know they stay pretty close together, and they've got a lot of people behind them, including those of us here at the STPN and with the CJ Show.
Absolutely. That's very well said on your part. I don't really have too much more to add other than just it's unspeakable tragedy, and I'm happy we're continuing to honor it today, and just thinking back to it, just of how devastating the impact was, and just how it did feel as if the entire country stopped that day. And it's nice to see whoever's just the families continue to honor it, obviously, and the remaining survivors from that team just continue to go on with their lives as well. But also, just it's good for us to take a moment and think of those lives lost in that unfortunate tragedy. It was really sad. Yeah, bit of a sad end for the CJ Show, but I think it was really important for both of us to acknowledge the 5-year anniversary of the unfortunate bus crash with the humble Broncos team. But we will be back on Monday with a brand new episode. We'll get closer to the playoff picture, seeing what it will look like. We'll have questions in as well for Ask CJ. Get your questions in right now, whether you're on Discord, whether you're on Twitter. Carrier Pigeon is also a viable way to get us questions in. We still kind of have to figure out the logistics of where, but we'll figure that out. You'll see something soon. Anyway, I'm just kidding. But yeah, we'll get questions in on that. And then we're getting closer and closer to the playoffs, buddy. I have no idea what I'm going to be doing in the next few days, but I look forward to figuring out what that resolution will be.
Keep your mind in small places. Stand where your feet are right now. You'll figure it out. You'll be fine.
For Chris Johnston, I'm Julian McKenzie. So long. Happy Green Shirt Day and peace.
The Chris Johnston Show.
Powered by Sports Interaction. Want to bet?
Inside the Game, twice a week. Follow Chris on Twitter @ReporterChris. And follow Julian McKenzie @JK McKenzie.
The Chris Johnston Show.